The spark that ignited the war was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, next in line to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, back when Austria and Hungary were one country. He was killed in Bosnia by Serbs, people from Serbia, so Austria declared war on Serbia. Russia was an ally of Serbia, so they declared war on Austria, and Germany was an ally of Austria, so they declared war on Russia and France, because they knew France was an ally of Russia, and they wanted to get their attack in France before France were ready. Then, as they carried out their first attack, Germany went through Belgium to get to France. Belgium, who Britain had signed a treaty promising to protect, and therefore Britain joined the war. The Germans very nearly won in 1914 with their Schlieffen Plan. That was the name of the plan they had to win the war. Created by this old German general called General Alfred von Schlieffen, but thankfully the French army, alongside the small British army, held the Germans back. The Germans dug trenches in Belgium and France for protection from British and French attacks. The British and French dug trenches for protection from German bullets and artillery as they paused before continuing the attack. The trenches were supposed to be temporary, but ended up being the main feature of the war for the next 4 years. The trenches began as nothing more than holes in the ground, but became very sophisticated with 3 lines of defence. This is one reason why they were so hard to attack. The front line, the support trenches, and the reserve trenches were all the 3 lines of trench that you would get. Men would be rotated, so they didn't usually spend more than just 15% of their time in the front line. Most of their days would be in the support trenches, reserve trenches, or behind the lines. Britain had traditionally depended on their navy for protection, because we're an island, so they'd only had a small army. When it became clear that the war wasn't going to be over very quickly, a man named Lord Kitchener, Secretary of State for War, organised a recruitment campaign that was very successful in getting men to join the army. We realised we'd need a bigger army. You might recognise this famous and very effective poster with Lord Kitchener on it himself. The British government came to promise that if men joined up together they would serve together as a way of encouraging more people to join. So men from the same cricket clubs, same factories or streets marched down to the recruitment office and were placed in the same battalions to fight together. These were called pals battalions because the men were supposed to be pals. However, good idea for recruitment and it worked, but it was a bit of a disaster for some towns and villages. For example, in the Battle of the Somme from July to November 1916, when in some cases the majority of men from whole towns could be wiped out in minutes in one small attack or large attack. Back on the home front, Britain was and still is dependent on imports to feed the population, and German submarines were making that difficult in the First World War. Rationing was introduced. Also, many who had not volunteered to fight were shamed by women who handed them a white feather as a symbol of cowardice. There was the threat of bombing from the big German Zeppelins, though nothing like the Blitz that you've probably heard about in the Second World War. Although, despite it not being as big as that, it was the first time that civilians back home were not safe, despite being miles away from the front lines. Eventually the war ended in November 1918. There were a number of reasons for this, but one of them was that although both sides were exhausted, Germany and her allies were exhausted first. And with the looming reality that more and more new, fresh American troops were poised to join in on the side of the Allies, Germany ended up with no choice but to sign the armistice and end the war.